Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Coming up, is Barry Robson on song to become the next Don's Don? Incy Wincy Spiders are dreaming big, but is it always sunny at Mount Florida? And the relegation run has begun. Do Motherwell have the steel to stay up? Yes, a warm welcome to the show. I'm afraid to say, yes, I have returned also. I am Andrew Slaven, who some may say is the Poundland Stephen Thompson, but my hello is better and manlier, in my opinion. Joining me on the pod is West Ham's senior producer and my media missus, Laura Brannan.
Welcome back. Poundland Stephen Thompson. That's a wee bit harsh. Come on. More like the, John Lewis version of Stephen Thompson.
I'll take that. I was hoping for W. Smith from you, Laura, but there you go. You didn't slag me for calling you my media missus, so I appreciate that.
I'll take it. It's fine. I answer to most things.
And a man with the smoothest voice in podcast history is football filmmaker Findlay Marks. Hello, mate.
Hey, how you doing? I might not have the smoothest of voices this week. It might be a bit crackly, not getting much sleep at the moment, because we've just welcomed our second wee boy into the world, so now a father of two, which is good. But it's nice to be recording with you, taking a break from changing nappies. So let's get down to it, talking about teams that are pish up front and shite at the back.
It's normally the case. We start this show and there's not really much football at the top of it, but I don't know if people like that. Maybe they don't. But congratulations, Finn. That's great news about the extra body taking up your time in the household. To be fair to you, looking at the Zoom recording we've got there now, the bags under the eyes aren't that bad, mate, so it looks like you're doing well.
Yeah, it's mostly because I'm just having coffee intravenously injected at this point, so I'm fairly perky by this point in the morning.
We're also recording at Finn's lunchtime as well, so I think the bags under the eyes are definitely for me and you, Andrew.
Yeah, that's a fair shout. That is a fair shout. Finn, sorry, I do have to ask you this. Do you get Iron Brew in Australia?
You do get Iron Brew in Australia. You don't get it in a jeggy bottle, much like London. So that's the real issue, to be honest. You do get cans of it, so there is a supply. You can get them in most supermarkets, but it's really expensive. So it's a couple of dollars for a can, so it'd be the equivalent of about £2 for a can of Iron Brew.
I can't even find a can of Iron Brew in London. I can find a bottle.
Oh, shut up,
I can find
Laura.
a bottle. I cannot find a can anywhere. And
if you go to most corner
is exactly
shops.
what you need when you're hungover. A bottle don't do it.
If there are any Scottish people in London, B&M stores not only sell cans of Iron Brew, Laura, but I can find cans of Tennent's there. So it's been class.
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah, man. And I would say that's a change of tack in B&M's strategy.
This is a game changer.
Absolutely delicious. Anyway, over the weekend, there's always a bit of a laugh and a joke going on, but can someone pick out the best moments from the weekend?
Aye, who's up for a game of rock, scissors, paper? St Johnson are.
Did you do that for a laugh? Did you do that for a laugh? Rock, scissors, paper.
Hold on. No, it's rock, scissors, paper.
Oh my God. Who says rock, scissors, paper? It's rock, paper, scissors.
Oh, when you say it like that, actually, it does sound a wee bit more normal.
I am today years old before I knew there was a correct way of both of you putting them in. I'm like, whatever combination people say those three words, I'll be like, I know the game that you play.
No, Finn, I'm not having that.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors, that, yeah, I'm going to give you that. It sounds a bit more normal.
I've definitely heard people say scissors, paper, rock.
It's rock, paper, scissors.
Is that mad?
We have to move on, but I'm...
Okay.
Well, which game did St Johnson play? Because, whatever it was, it didn't work.
What happened?
So yeah, basically St John's were playing Celtic, and when they were stepping up to take a free kick, the cameras caught them huddled over each other, playing a game of rock, paper, scissors.
Thank you.
And to decide who was actually going to take the free kick.
That was amazing.
They didn't score from it, so I think maybe they should reevaluate that strategy for the next game.
I think there's actually not trying to distill it too much into the nitty-gritty of the situation, but I think it's absolutely fine for a manager to be like, look, decide amongst yourselves who's going to take the free kick, depending on the angle, the distance, all of that kind of stuff, because players have different attributes. and scoring from a free kick's not that impressive anyway, Laura, am I right? So it doesn't really matter anyway. But I think surely there are better ways to figure it out than rock, paper, scissors. It looks so hokey. Like, I'd be embarrassed if I was playing in a Sunday league match and teammates or opposition did that in our game. So to get it in a top flight match,
Could they not do what they do for like corners, where they hold up one arm or two arms to signal which one of the practices that they've tried? By the way, I'm going to just hold my hands up here. I've been following football since I was 10 years old, and I only actually realised a couple of years ago why players do that at the corner flag.
Well, you only just found out it's rock, paper, scissors and not rock, scissors.
I did not know for a long time.
But yeah,
that it was.
It's like a football tick. It's like you don't. Does any player go up to the corner flag and put their hands up in the air, really knowing that it's like? I mean, it's like to get everyone ready that they're going to take the corner kick, right? But it's kind of like, it's almost like signalling. It's like, yeah, I'm ready. It's a stupid signal and all, if we think about it.
Hold on a minute. Are you trying to tell me you don't know the reason for it, Andrew?
No, the reason is to let everyone know I'm gonna kick the ball.
No.
I'm gonna kick the ball.
No, it's not.
No.
No, it's not.
Whoa, wait a minute. Really?
It's to try and tell your teammates what set piece you're going to try and play. Near post, far post, middle of the box.
They've been practicing different set pieces.
So one arm goes up, it could be near post. Two arms go up, it could be far post.
I always thought I was good at set pieces.
But my favourite thing with that, just to go back to this point...
I love that I actually wasn't the last person to discover that this is on.
My favourite thing about this, especially watching the Premiership, the SPFL and all the divisions below it as well, is when a player clearly holds his arm up being like, great, I'm going to do this specific set piece that we've been training all week, and then just proceeds to blast it into the first man. That's my favourite type of corner routine.
Amazing. Decent. Look, there were some other great moments at the weekend, none more so than Stephen Humphrey's strike for Hearts to make it 3-1. What an absolute belter this is. The last time I saw a goal like that involving the Scottish team was probably Kemar Ruth in the Europa League fin.
So yes, no, I was
yeah.
going to bring this up because I distinctly remember you saying it wasn't hugely impressive when Kemar Ruth did it. It was absolutely kicking it down with rain, and he does something similar to Humphreys, which is he skins about three men, makes it to the halfway line and just goes, I'm just going to smash it from here. And both, I just want to make it clear, both are stunning goals, and both I think should be considerations for the Puskas Award. But I distinctly remember you saying that you weren't that impressed.
No. I'm going to correct you there, Finn. I'm going to correct you there because I think I jumped down your throat after you saying it was one of the best goals you had ever seen, and I was like, it's not one of the best goals you've ever seen. I didn't say it wasn't a rubbish
goal. To correct your correction, no, I think I said it was the best Rangers goal I'd ever seen live, like happening live. That's what I'd said.
Well,
yeah, which it was.
I stand corrected.
I think one of my favourite things about the goal as well was the Hearts TV commentary. Laurie, that is the commentator for most of the time for Hearts TV, is a really good commentator, and himself makes the thing of he tries to be as impartial as he can be. Obviously, it's fan TV, so it's slightly will be skewed towards Hearts. But I just love that he completely lost any inhibitions and just absolutely went for it. It's wonderful to listen to him describe that goal going in. Fantastic.
Great play by Humphreys, a break on for Hearts now. Humphreys goes from
No way!
Humphreys!
It's outrageous!
He scored from his own half! Oh, Humphreys, unbelievable!
Lewis Stevenson also hit a pretty massive landmark. 450 appearances for Hibs, making him he's the highest record appearance for Hibernian now, well ahead of Pat Stanton, an absolute legend at the club. But he had made his debut in 2005. I was still at high school.
Oh my God, that was the year I left high school. That's something.
Finn was already on his first child.
He doesn't even look old enough to be playing football for that long. He doesn't change someday.
He's done well. It's funny though, the amount of pundits that I can't remember who it was that said he's just constantly a 7 out of 10. I think it's just someone he never is excellent, but he's never ever bad.
That's exactly the sort of player you need in your team as well. Just that everlasting part of the furniture that just does the work, does the
Yeah.
job, just gets it done, and it'll be when he's gone that's when you're actually going to miss him, and you're going to realise just how important he's been to the last 2 decades.
Yeah, for sure. But there's been a lot more going on other than the weekend's football, because as any listener who regularly listens to us will notice that the show took a week off last week while we worked on deadline day and our real jobs. We probably enjoy this job more so, let's face it. But rounding up a few of the big stories to come out of the last few days of the window. Laura, your old pal Tony Watt making another move to another Premiership club, his 6th, in fact. You always used to say, like, this is a boy who needs to be loved. And do you think he's going to be loved back at his old pal's place?
Yeah, because he's back with Stephen Robinson again. A manager who just knows how to manage him. He knows exactly how to deal with his character, his personality. And to be fair, Tony played some of his best football when he was at Motherwell, when he was playing under Stephen Robinson. So I've got absolutely no doubts at all that he's going to hit the ground running at St Mirren, because he'll be happy behind the scenes. The happy Tony behind the scenes means a very happy Tony on the pitch scoring goals. It's an incredible start, though. I mean, six Premiership clubs. It's not the best. You do ask questions about it when you see numbers like that, because I mean, a few of us were actually asking, is that a record? Turns out Jim Hamilton played for 8 Premiership teams.
Whoa.
So he's not quite made it yet. But yeah, it does ask questions about in terms of him settling and his commitment to clubs. I get that. It's not the best optics. But as I say, a happy Tony behind the scenes means a happy Tony in the pitch, and it'll keep the St Mirren fans happy. So it's a win-win there.
It's a win-win. What about Ryan Porteous moving to Watford? Probably good. It's definitely a step up in level. I think that's fair to say. But he scored in his debut, and Watford are still in a good chance of reaching the Premier League again next season.
I think it's a great move for him. I know there was the I mean, who knows how real any of these links are, but I think there was real interest in potentially moving to Serie A. But I think the level in the Championship is a terrific grounding for players to make that next step up. We've seen a lot of players do it successfully, moving from the high end of the Scottish game. So Scott McKenna moving from Aberdeen to Nottingham Forest. The obvious example is John McGinn moving from Hibs to Aston Villa. And then those teams, being important parts of those teams, playing well and getting promoted. And now you see, Scott McKenna looks absolutely born to play in the Premier League, and McGinn's been an absolute revelation there for several seasons now. So it's a well-trodden pathway for Scottish players of a certain age and a certain ability to push themselves to go beyond. And I think it's a great move. Watford's a really good club. I'm a big fan of Slaven Bilic. I think he's interesting as a person and as a manager, but he seems to be getting a lot out of them, which is good, because Watford, I think, go through a manager every 10 to 15 minutes during a season. That aside, they're a really good club. They're close to London, bigger city, all of that kind of thing. I think it's a really great move for Porteous. So hopefully, he kind of goes on from where he started on his debut, and it can only be a good thing for the national team as well.
I'm just going to say, Dunfermline fans, Dunfermline, well done tonight. You pumped us, no twadoots.
A couple of talking points to move on, guys. But Alfredo Morelos was, I think, unfairly up for a bit of stick, particularly from Neil McCann, because he celebrated in front of Hearts fans after he scored, and it went to VAR. And it was then given, and he just went and ran up and celebrated. And Neil McCann called him an idiot. And Willie Miller piled in as well. It seems like this is part and parcel of the game, Laura. Would you not agree? It's fun, and it should be give and take.
I don't understand the backlash on this one. He celebrated a goal. Like, it's really bad that we have to wait 4 or 5 minutes sometimes to even get a VAR decision going through.
Oh, it's infuriating.
It's so bad. But when it is given, why can you not celebrate it? And okay, it's not even just the fact that he celebrated it like delayed. It's the fact he celebrated in front of the Hearts fans by doing a knee slide in the direction of the home support. Now, I'm sorry, but see when you've even got Robbie Nielsen coming out defending him, There's nothing wrong with it. This is football. This is what you want when you've got an opposition player scoring, winding up the opposition fans. It's just a bit of give and take. He's clearly been getting it all game. They've been winding each other up. Why would you not want this needle between the teams? It just adds what we all love about football. Why would you remove that? Why would you complain about that?
Yeah. But that's the furor, that particular celebration. That's like the gold standard, like shithousery celebration in my book. Like, it's fantastic because it scored at the other end of the pitch. So he literally uses all of his energy to run as fast as he can from one end of the pitch to the other to do this massive knee slide. And people are like, "Oh, you're not thinking of fan safety. You could have incurred a riot." It'd be like, they're grown men. Like, if you can't take it, then you shouldn't be at the football. Quite frankly, like, yeah.
Do you think it's because it's Alfredo Morelos, Findlay? Do you think he just gets the bad end of the stick because he's, I don't know, he's kind of portrayed as an unlikable character?
I think Morelos does come in for it from a lot of away supports around the country, more maybe than certain other players, but he's not the only one. But like Laura's saying, this is the joy of football. Like, this is part and parcel of the game, and I think when you sanitise this, and you've got... there was a great article that Adam Miller, Old Firm Facts, wrote for the Herald about this, where he referred to them as the celebration police, and I just thought that was a great way of describing it, because I'm just like, who's it offending?
Yeah.
No one. Like, apart from a few fans in the minute, I think that's the thing. First of all, it's hilarious
funny.
because, like Laura said, he had to wait 4 minutes, and as soon as the goal was given, he then smashed it over to the Hearts fans, did the knee slide and a little shush sign. And I'm like, that's amazing that he's been itching for 4 minutes to go over and celebrate against them. But it's fans pay their way into a game, and they're more than within their rights to say whatever they want to their own team as well as to an opposition team. So if they want to, I think, a lot of them were making insinuations about Alfredo Morelos' physique at the moment, which might not be the most trim he's ever been in. But if you're going to sit there and shout at him the whole game, being like, "You fat such and such," if he scores a goal, like, be prepared that he's going to celebrate in front. I think that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
But these are the celebrations that you remember the most in football. It's the cupping of the ears, it's the shushing, it's getting in each other's face. I mean, look, one of the most famous celebrations in Scottish football history is Scott Brown up against Juve.
That's right.
Like, it is that sort of niggling rivalry that players have had either with other players or other fans in the stand, and when they get the last laugh, that's shocking to see that sort of that conclusion.
Definitely.
Even away from Scottish football, Laura, being someone editing footage and everything, what you always see in rivalry pieces on Sky Sports or BT is you'll always see Adebayor for Man City running all the way from his goal, scoring his goal straight to Arsenal fans just after he'd signed for Man City from Arsenal. Just to give it a bit and be like, "Yeah, I've left you," and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
As a consumer of sport, I do like a little bit of Poohousery. So, yeah, I'm a fan.
I think Willie Miller's also had a hell of a week of it as well, because he was also piling in on the Aberdeen rejects. Did we see this? So he had a go when St Mirren beat Aberdeen in the midweek game last week. And because it was Curtis Main and Declan Gallagher that scored the goals, obviously two Aberdeen players at the time that didn't really quite make it at Poohousery, Willie Miller was a wee bit sensitive after the game and had a wee dig at they lost to Aberdeen rejects scoring the goals as well. Absolute fair play to St Mirren, by the way, because the photo they put out the next morning was just a little cheeky picture of Declan Gallagher drinking from his Starbucks cup that had written on it Aberdeen reject. I just thought, so cheeky, but absolutely brilliant at the same time. Absolutely, that was a good chat.
That's really good. I've actually felt a bit sorry for Willie Miller in recent weeks just because of how bad it's been for Aberdeen, but I think it all stems back to Scott Arfield's like 97th minute winner or whatever it was, where on the I think it was the BBC commentary, he's literally on air screaming, "Oh no!" when Arfield bundles the ball over the line, so I think he's not really recovered from that point yet.
The fans have been getting into a bit more stick as well about leaving stadiums early, guys. Are you a fan? I'll tell you a story right now. When I was about 13, I went to see Queen of the South and we were losing, and I didn't want to leave, right, because it wasn't over yet, but my brother was there with my dad, and he just wanted to go home after like 75 minutes, and we were 2-0 down. I can't remember now who scored the 2 goals to make it 2-2, but I remember leaving the grounds and I was a bit upset. And we scored 2 goals in the last 5 minutes, and we got a little bit down the road. We heard the cheers. It's like my brother's still 2-1, and then you heard the cheers as soon as we got into the car. I was fuming, but again, that's the reason why you stay. Am I wrong?
It's a difficult conversation to have because some people do leave grounds early for specific reasons, if it's work or just the amount of time it takes to get out. I think that actually speaks much more into the logistics around a lot of stadia in Scotland, because unless you've got a car, it can't cater for the volume of supporters that come to the games, especially if it's somewhere like Ibrox where you've got 52,000 people coming in and out of the ground, over the course of an hour and a half or a couple of hours. I can only speak from that point of view, having grew up watching Rangers and going to Ibrox and things. As a kid, I remember asking the question. I was like, why is everybody leaving? The game's not over yet. And, it being explained to me that, some people want to get a head start in the traffic or something. I'd be like, yeah, but you've paid your ticket to get into the game. And sometimes the best bit of action's right at the end. Like, why wouldn't you stay? So it's just, as a kid, it never made sense. And as an adult, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't want to have a go at any fans that have to leave early. But for the exact reason you're saying, Andrew, like I guess it's maybe it depends on your potentially the way that you view the day out and what you're doing. Because if you're going and it's the beers beforehand with your mate and potentially a pint afterwards as well with your mate, and it's the only time you get to see them once a fortnight or whatever, who are you to say, well, if we leave 10 minutes early, it means we get to the bar and I can actually get that pint before I have to go home, or your train time or whatever it is. There's that. I think it's objectively just talking about the football match. It's much easier to say, well, why wouldn't you stay for the full game? But it's not always as cut and dried as that. So I want to give some people leeway that way. But for me, even if it meant not getting an extra beer or something, or I'm going to not get this train, but I'll try and get the next one, or I have to get an Uber to somewhere else or whatever, I would always stay. Like the joy for me is, of course, it's all that stuff. It's being with your mates. It's going for a beer. It's doing all that. But the joy, the reason we're there is the football. Like, that's what I want to be there for. And I want to soak all of that up as much as I can. Be there for every moment. That late drama, if there is any, even if it's a late goal or whatever. And then to applaud the team off the pitch. To have that walk away when it's night time away from the stadium, the lights are on and everything. That I love that just as much as any other aspect of the day, but some people might not feel the same way.
This has came up because of Rangers, and it's been talked about because of Ibrox especially, and I get that the Rangers have been winning games. So, and also when you look at Ibrox specifically, they're probably one of the best connected grounds to public transport in the Premiership. You can literally walk around the corner and you get on the underground. That in Scotland is actually quite a luxury compared to other grounds. I mean, I've left Hampden and had to walk half an hour to the city centre, or sit in a car, like literally sit in a car park worth of traffic for half an hour at least. So yeah, I mean, what an absolute luxury to be able to walk to the tube station after a game. But yeah, this is a bigger subject, and it's a bigger talking point for all clubs and all teams. I'm the same thing. Growing up, I never understood it. You wouldn't leave a theatre early, and you wouldn't leave a cinema early. You've paid your ticket, you've paid your money for your ticket to go to an event, to watch a show. At least clap the players off. Okay, fine, if they've lost, you don't need to clap the players off, but at least the people there, you're there to watch a show, and those entertainers are going to leave the pitch or the stage at the end. Show a bit of gratitude. At least wait till they've left the area before you do. It's a strange culture to just be like, I need to get that pint. Like, maybe if we had alcohol in the games, it might be a wee bit different. But it's a very strange culture. I get one or two want to go home and get back to their family or whatever. Fine, but when you see droves leaving stadiums, come on, there's no excuse for that.
But this isn't just Rangers. This is the kind of thing about all football fans, or all sports fans in general. I know we can pass judgment and stuff like that, but, I'm trying to put myself in the headset of someone who has a season ticket or whatnot. I know you fork out a lot of money for it, but like you said, everyone has their own reasons, and if they want to leave, they can leave. Especially if you're losing 4-0. Before the weekend, Aberdeen had conceded 15 goals in the 4 games before a 3-1 win over Motherwell at home. It's a huge win for interim manager Barry Robson, who's clearly in the frame for the job full time. Surprisingly, Aberdeen have the 4th best home record in the league, but the 2nd worst on the road. Is it too early to suggest Robson is right to take over this role? Does he need to show more away form to kind of really stamp his place as the man in frame? Or should we be looking, I say we, I'm not an Aberdeen fan, but Aberdeen should be looking at other left field options, perhaps, guys?
The big thing for Aberdeen, I think, at the moment, because they do still feel a club that hasn't quite figured a lot of things out on and off the park. I think, Dave Cormack, for better or for worse, has brought about change in quite significant ways in Aberdeen. I think, actually, to be fair to him, I think in quite a lot of ways, he has looked to try and be progressive and move the club forward and kind of bring it into much more of a modern day way that a big club like Aberdeen should do, But I just think in terms of the last couple of coaches that have come in, they're ones that on paper looked good and could have worked, but in terms of all the actual aspects of what it takes to be Aberdeen manager at the moment, they might not have been the right appointments to make. Maybe with Goodwin, I think the point was raised in the pod a couple of weeks ago that he potentially is a manager that's done better when he's at teams that don't have a lot of resources, where those teams will be most weeks on the back foot. So they're very well set up, they're very well drilled and trained, but they don't actually know how to go on the offensive as much. And then you go to a club like Aberdeen, who nominally are the 3rd biggest team in the country. It's a different way that you have to adapt to your play to that, because you're the team that's expected to attack, to take the game to the opposition. And it's weird because, again, there's this weird Jekyll and Hyde thing going on with Aberdeen, as has been going on with Hibs, I think, quite a lot this season, where when they're good, they're really good and they look great, and that tends to be when they're at Pittodrie. But when they're bad, they stink the place out. Sometimes you see them in games and you're like, it doesn't look like this defence has ever met each other before. And then the next week they're great and they can keep 2 consecutive clean sheets at home. So all of that to say, I think it's a really important appointment, the next one for Aberdeen. Appointing a new manager is always important, but I think it really has to be somebody who fits all of the different things in context of being able to play a certain type of football and understand what is expected of Aberdeen and their place in the Scottish game, but also to do this thing which Dave Cormack wants to marry in, which is this progressive approach. I think a much wider way of approaching the game and trying to further Aberdeen as a team, not just within the Scottish game, but looking to do that on a more consecutive level on a European stage as well.
If we look at some of the names, Finn and Laura, that are involved in the run, going by the bookies, let's just say, Chris Wilder is actually at the top with 4-1. Barry Robson, it kind of has it. I think it's in his hands, if I'm honest. Then followed by some names like you mentioned that do the kind of rounds at all stages of a season. Finn, Neil Lennon is up there. Jack Ross is a name that's always going to be linked. But some interesting ones. Paul Lambert, Darren Fletcher was heavily linked with them before Jim Goodwin was appointed. But one I'd point out, I think would be quite interesting, someone I know quite well, Danny Cowley. Do you know much about the Cowleys, guys? He's really interesting. Danny Cowley and his brother basically came up from probably the 7th or 8th tier of English football and got them to a point in their history where they were in the playoffs for promotion into the Football League system, and then was poached by Lincoln City, who, under their stewardship, the Cowleys got all the way up to League One. Now, after Lincoln, they took a massive jump up to Huddersfield. It didn't really quite work out, and then went to Portsmouth. And I think after they got sacked there, the fans weren't too happy with that. I think they kind of didn't think they were given enough time or enough support. But maybe that's a similar scenario to Jim Goodwin. Guys who are used to running things with small budgets, but then when they're really going up to maybe bigger teams and bigger expectations, they can't quite make it. But I'd love to see Danny Cowley in Scottish football. An interesting link nonetheless, but maybe for me, Barry Robson, Or maybe Paul Lambert, guys. Maybe he'll want to return to Scottish football. I don't know.
I think it's really interesting, the Darren Fletcher link, because anytime I've heard him speak about football, I think he sounds like an incredibly astute and clever person, the way he talks and analyses the game. So he'd be interesting. Just on the Man United connection and on a slightly Australian connection here as well, saw during the week that Mark Bosnich, who's kind of like the Michael Stewart of Australian football punditry, make of that what you will, he kind of suggested that Dwight York would be a sensational appointment for Aberdeen. So good, in fact, that he would consider them to challenge for European titles if Dwight York was there, not just Scottish domestic titles. So that could be another one to keep on the back burner as well, Dwight York.
Dwight York. Oh, I'd love that. That would be amazing. Amazing. Well, like I said, they did get a vital victory over Motherwell. 3-1 it ended. But I have to say, the relegation battle at the bottom is pretty fierce now. It's never easy to look up when you're already looking down, but for the likes of Dundee United, Motherwell, Ross County, Kilmarnock, who is best equipped to survive at this stage of the season? Motherwell and Dundee United joint bottom with only a point separating them and Ross County. Killie 3 points better off, but should Motherwell be the most worried, Laura? We've seen a fan banner at the club. To me, it seems like Stevie Hamill has the backing of the fans and there's a bit more of a want from the players. But are these players doing enough, or is there more things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the photos of the banner placed in the car park outside the stadium saying show some passion for the badge on your shirt. I don't think this banner is for the coaches. It's not for Stevie Hamill. I think this is a message to the players. There is frustration for the manager, but I don't think it's at the tipping point just yet where there is complete sweeping majority in the stands that want a change in management. And that might be down to the fact that he is a club legend, so it maybe buys you a bit more time and a bit more sympathy when things don't go your way, which is maybe what, for example, Graham Alexander didn't have when he had his players playing probably quite similar football in terms of just not doing it, not getting the results, not turning on the pitch. So there is still an element, I'm not saying full, but there is still an element of support for Stevie Hamill. It is, I think now, fans are getting a wee bit annoyed with the players in terms of just the performances they're putting in, the kind of the lack of appetite that they're seeing during games. What I find interesting is the changes during a transfer window, and this is why I think it would also be very harsh to change the management just now, because he has just had a chance to completely transform the squad into his look and feel of the place. Not too many went out. They lost Sonji Soho, they lost Connor Shields, Matt Penny went back to his club, and Barry Maguire went on loan to Dundee. They're the four most fullbacks. Coming in though, they brought in 9 players. They've kind of ticked off all the areas here. John Obika is a really interesting one. Callum Butcher as well. I don't think it was particularly a position they were desperate for. They were really desperate for a defender, a central defender. Even you can see that at the weekend, they played like pretty much, their back line was all fullbacks. But to bring in Callum Butcher, I think, is a really interesting one, because he's a boy that knows Scottish football inside out, which is perfect for a relegation battle. He's also got that bite and meat about him that just, he goes into a tackle, he's not scared of a yellow card. And I think that sort of passion and heart in the heart of the team, in the heart, like down the spine of the pitch as well, is really, really important come this kind of battle going into the kind of business end of the season. Yeah,
probably a shame that Michael Mandron got injured after scoring 2 goals in his debut. It's someone who probably needs to settle in quickly to help Motherwell. Their last win came on the 29th of October against Dundee United. Now, Dundee United, for me, a team who promised so much at the start of the season. It's been such a difficult year for them. But oddly, when I look at the stats, if you look at the form tables of the last 8 games, for instance, the home record, the away record, the best attack, they're not bottom of any of them other than the league table. So in the last 8, they're kind of mid-table. They are kind of 4th from bottom on home records. They are 3rd from bottom on away records. They've got the 4th worst attack, but they're bottom of the table. Is that odd?
there's not, I don't think, an enormous amount that separates those teams in terms of the way that the teams play, what's kind of expected of them and all that kind of thing. It just tends to be like who's going to pick up form at the right time. Because I remember thinking, was it last season or the season before, that Ross County were like basically hopeless up until it had been just before Christmas, and then they absolutely started battering in some amazing results post Christmas, and that was really what saved their season, and actually did. I think they ended up pushing into the top 6 and just scraping in the end. So there's still, it's so tight, and it just needs, I think, one or two of the teams to go on like a 2-3 game run of picking up wins or at least avoiding defeats for them to put themselves on slightly firmer footing.
The problem with Ross County beat, the reason they're down there at this stage of the season is because in the first half of the season they couldn't score goals. They are a good team, and they're a very well run team. They play very well, they do make it difficult, but when you're not banging in the goals, you're not getting the points, and it's really, really simple. That's why they're at the bottom end of the table. The transfer business they've done in January, though, I think is huge. Eamon Brophy coming from St Mirren on loan is a massive coup for them. Simon Money as well, as you mentioned, from Queen's Park. These are two really big signings, and I think from a Dundee United and a Motherwell and a Kilmarnock perspective, you look at that and you go, that's worrying, because who is everyone else bringing in when you've got Simon Money and Eamon Brophy, who are established goal scorers in the top division? They're players that can save your season.
Oh, that's a tagline and a half.
Regret it's not, it's good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
Now, it was only 4 years ago that Queen's Park ended their amateur status in Scottish professional football leagues. The vote to go professional has brought with it immense success and are on course for a third successive promotion. However, recent news being dumped out of the Scottish Cup last week after fielding an ineligible player has caused Chief Executive Leanne Dempster to issue an apology to fans. But how upset are the fans in recent years? As much as there's been success on the pitch, how much success has there been off it? Because I'm delighted to say I'm joined by a Queen's Park fan from the Spiders Talk podcast, David Blair. And can you just give us a summary of Queen's Park's history and most recent history leading up to the latest news of last weekend?
I think it'd be really difficult to summarise Queen's Park's history in even just a snippet for you here, to be perfectly honest. Anybody that loves Scottish football history or just football history in general, if they aren't aware of Queen's Park, should look up Queen's Park and just see the kind of contribution that they put into the game. We are finally catching up, as you say, after 152 years of being an amateur club. We have turned professional, and what a turnaround that has been. It's surprised every single one of us in the last 3 years that we've ended up where we are, and this season certainly is a surprise. I'm loving it on the park, but you're right, there's been some issues off it.
Well, overall, are fans pretty happy with how things are being run at the moment?
For a lot of fans, it does split into actually two parts of the club. There is the on-field and the off-field club. On the field, 4 points, 4-point lead in the Scottish Championship at this moment in time. The brand of football and the way that Owen Coyle, Sandy Stewart, his backroom staff has got the players playing is absolutely brilliant. I suppose part of that as well, you've got Mary Bucher, who was the director of football. He was involved at AZ Alkmaar. He obviously has been a big name attraction to the club, and he's looking to implement some it is actually almost a totally revolutionary way of looking at football in Scotland, and that's part of what we hope will sustain the club going forward. That side of things on the field, or on the pitch, has been brilliant. Off the pitch, there's been a lot of struggles. Let's start with obviously the Scottish Cup, the ineligible player. The original tie against Inverness in the Scottish Cup 4th round was postponed due to the weather. Because of that, there is the rule. It's Rule 12.5. I'm very, very familiar with that rule. But it's Rule 12.5 in the Scottish Cup that says if a game is postponed, you're only allowed to use players that were eligible to play at the original date of the original fixture, which makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, this was missed by the club. Ewan Henderson, who has came in on loan from Hearts. He replaced Simon Murray, another name I'm sure we'll mention later on also. He replaced Simon Murray in the starting lineup. He, of course, joined the club after the original date. Therefore, clear cut, we fielded an ineligible player. The standard punishment for that is to be expelled from the cup. There is absolutely no complaints from certainly myself and any other Queen's Park fan I've spoken to. It is an obvious error. It's a bad one. The apology from Leanne Dempster came out because the club did make their initial statement early on Friday afternoon. It was a statement that was attributed to club president David Hunter, and it said, amongst other things, well, the main thing was that it didn't actually include the words sorry or apology. What it said was, we accept the findings of the SFA. It was a mistake. We'll learn from it, which are all things that should be said. But there wasn't that actual apology. There was an acknowledgement of, for example, fans taking the time out to travel up on the Tuesday, because it was a midweek game away to Inverness. That's a big, long journey. People are having to take time off their work to get there. And at the end of the day, it was all for nothing. And there wasn't that apology, which upset a number of Queen's Park fans. And it was then picked up, of course, by fans of other teams who looked at that statement and said, why are they not even apologising? How can they not just say sorry?
It's interesting because when you do look at the history of Queen's Park, it's not just a wonderful one, but it's always been a club steeped in its community, like many Scottish clubs. But when you look at Queen's Park being pretty much the first in Scotland, and one that's achieved so much in its history, just the club motto in itself, for the sake of playing, is such a wonderful one as well. When you went pro and you've brought in these professional, leaders in their field like Leanne Dempster and the guy that I won't repeat his name from AZ Alba, is it? Do you feel like there's maybe been the club has left its previous roots, and maybe there's an element that some fans may miss that kind of small-minded club mentality, or is this journey been more worth it than all of that?
There's part of the club has been left behind. Of course it has. There is no getting away from that. Moving away from that amateur status did stop Queen's Park from being a relatively small club in Scottish football in these days, which a lot of people did like. A lot of people were attracted to that. Turning professional, the more money coming in, we're able to sign the better players, and then by consequence, the very quick rise up the leagues has caused some areas of the club to not keep up with the change of pace and the change of sort of expectations on the pitch itself. That was something that Leanne Dempster did actually acknowledge. We had the game on BBC Scotland on Friday, the 2-0 victory over Ayr, and Leanne Dempster at half-time was speaking to the presenters there, and she herself acknowledged that, things perhaps aren't quite where they should be. There's all great acknowledging that, but she is also the chief executive of the club and has been for a good bit of time now. If things aren't up to speed, it's on her to get that sorted, and she perhaps needs to do it very quickly, because, again, another comment or another question that was put to her in that interview was, will the club be, or is the club prepared to be promoted again, to have this third promotion in 3 years? And what she kind of said was, we'll deal with it if it comes. It's like, well, no, because we didn't quite plan to be where we are this season. We finished last season 28 points behind Gove, who, we're a fair bit ahead of in the league now. We also went up through the playoffs. We clearly weren't prepared to come into the championship off the park. We made the changes on the park, signed the players that are doing a great job on it. But we really need to accelerate it. We really need to get the finger out.
No, this is the thing. I mean, some football fans who, outside of Scottish football, who just love football, right? They might look at this rise of Queen's Park and liken it to Gretna. And we all know what happened to Gretna.
Yeah.
I know what my views are on it, and I think Queen's Park are far more acquitted to make this step up. But can you give me it in your own words?
I mean, obviously the Gretna comment, I think a lot of it does come from, at the end of
it, it's unfair. It's unfair. I might say, but it came up.
It's unfair, and certainly in certain aspects, part of it is going to be correct. after Gretna and after what they did in Scottish football, any club that gets a bit of money behind them and then starts going perhaps where people don't expect them to be is going to be called Gretna. We are just doing a very, very good job of getting a lot of attention on us, a lot of eyes looking at us, and people say, oh, well, yeah, look, there's I suppose, well, when I say traditionally here, I do mean in recent history. I say we spoke earlier on about the history of Queen's Park, but in recent times, we've been a small club. People have not really considered us unless they're talking about Andy Robertson. So therefore, people don't expect to see us where we are. When you have the money behind you, people are going to call you Gretna. Look, you know what? We just have to accept that. People perhaps would be better off looking at, what the club are actually doing. There's things like, this year, so in January, it was announced that the Queen's Park Youth Academy was awarded the elite status in Scottish football. It's the CAS elite. I think that's exactly what it's called. So elite status there, which means that our youth academy is being held to the same, high standards as Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, the top teams in Scotland. And that's ongoing criteria that has to be met. That's where the majority of our investment's going. People say that we're buying the league. I mean, we just lost the joint top goal scorer in the championship to a team who are paying them more money. If we are Gretna and if we're going to throw that much money about, and the only way we're going to go up through the leagues is by overpaying for players and buying performers on the park, why did we just lose Simon Murray?
Yeah, really good point. But I think you're absolutely bang on, David. The way that when you look into the background in recent years, and this the fact that one of the key elements for Queen's Park in selling Hampden to the SFA, for instance, one of the key aspects was to secure the site next to Hampden, wasn't it? They wanted to have that car park area there so that they could still be close to their ancestral home. That is where they were born. And do you think that this stadium situation, now I believe it was supposed to be up and running kind of springtime 21, and if anyone's not realised or looked at the clock, it is 2023 right now. But David, what the hell is going on there?
Yeah, that's where I try to be very positive about things. I try to always sort of look at even when it came to like the Simon Murray, departure this or last week, you have your initial kind of moment of anger and being very upset. I still am trying to look very positive. When it comes to Lesser Hampden, it's very, very difficult for me. You say it was supposed to be spring 2021. Honestly, I've lost count of the number of rough dates and then half announcements and kind of little whispers that you hear as to when Lesser Hampden should be ready. At this point, I think, or rather even on Friday just there, Leanne Debster did say that she expects us to be in by the end of this season. I wouldn't bother with that. Like, honestly, if she was going to be listening to me and take my advice, just see out the season where we are right now. You never know.
She won't be listening.
You never know. You never know. But you've got things like, we had a couple of games at Hampden in December, and people thought that might actually have kick-started as being back in Glasgow, because obviously right now we're playing at Ochilview Stadium through in just outside Falkirk, which is about a 25-mile, drive away, which, and listen, don't get me wrong, it's not the end of the world, but at the same time, when you're doing that every single week on top of away games everywhere else, it does add up and it takes its toll. And when it's a club that's trying to build, because again, one of these big things is about, as you said earlier on, Queen's Park being in the community, going back to that kind of tradition, using that tradition to try and attract new fans to the club. If you say to somebody, oh yeah, do you want to come along to a Queen's Park game, and you have to jump on a bus for 30 miles, people are just go, you know what, no, I'm not going to bother. If they're sitting on the fence about whether they want to start coming along to Queen's Park, we've missed out potentially on 2 really good seasons of football on the park to build this support. And a part of that's probably pretty good, because the current plans for Lesser Hampden are just absolutely not fit for purpose. As it stands right now, it's only going to be, I think it's just short of 1,000 seats in the one stand. You also have the sort of rather garish director's box / function suite, I think it's going to be, that sits on the west side of the park. Unfortunately for Queen's Park, it has been dubbed the Royal Box by Queen's Park fans and a lot of just other fans of Scottish football. And see, when something like that sticks, it's a really, really bad image, and it's going to be something that's really difficult for the club to shed. And in part, that just kind of epitomises the kind of sort of feeling between, as I say, this behind the scenes and what's going on versus the fans just trying to get to games, trying to support their team, and hopefully see them back in Glasgow.
But Queen's Park, the geography, and in terms of, 5 years ago to fans now, do you think Queen's Park can generate a real buzz around the area to kind of galvanise more local fans to come and support the team?
Yeah, obviously back when we were at Hampden and we were, third division, flirting with the second division every now and then, you probably talk between 400 to maybe 800 fans on a good day, something like that. When we play at Ochilview this season, you have, for the home fans, there's a stand at that stadium which is for home fans, and I think that seats about 650. Now that seems to sell out every single time. There has been, for all that I have given, some stick to some of the off-field stuff, there has been some good off-field stuff. Last season when we were at Firhill, at Partick Thistle's home stadium, which had plenty of seats there, and when we had those 2 games at Hampden in December to end the year, the club did look at initiatives, and again, they do try at Ochilview, but it's difficult with the limited seats. But they've been doing a lot of initiatives with like schools in the area. So looking at, getting free tickets and getting players along to local schools, getting kids interested, because Glasgow obviously is a big football city. It's pretty dominated by, of course, 2 big teams. I think the club accept that you're going to be very, very hard pushed to rock up now in the Championship or the Premiership, and somebody who's been following a team already for 10, 20, 30 years, etc., that isn't going to drop that and come and follow us. So they've clearly targeted, promoting the club to school children and getting them along that way. Get them in early. If you're getting tickets to come along to games, that will generate your interest and all do that. So there has been really good initiatives like that, and I do think with that, coupled with being back in the south side, there will be some of those sort of hanging on fans that maybe just didn't attend an awful lot, maybe only went to big cup games or something like that, or maybe went and started supporting maybe a Premier League team just because they couldn't be bothered watching third division football anymore. They will come back. It will interest people, but we need to have a stadium that can accommodate all these people.
And to touch upon what we've already said as well, knowing the strategy of Queen's Park and the type of characters and leaders that they're bringing in the leadership structure is quite fascinating and really interesting. That they've earmarked that's the way that we can be sustainable in this kind of new future that you're going in. So I mean, I don't want to jinx it, mate, but you're looking like it's going to go straight to the top flight, mate. How does that feel?
The future is still bright, and I do believe that the way the club are going about it, as you say, is the right way. Is trying to invest. Of course, there's an increased investment in the first team squad, but I really don't believe that a lot of it, that we're that much higher, if we are higher than the likes of Dundee that are in the same obviously division, and we've got a 4-point lead over them, or is it 5 points I think, but they have a game in hand.
Sure.
Either way, it's still a very, very close title race between us, Ayr, Dundee, Partick Thistle, or Inverness perhaps could even sneak back in as well. Obviously, the one thing about the Scottish Championship is every single year it surprises you. Perhaps we will be that surprise this year, but again, knowing Scottish football, I still think there's another twist in the tail yet before we get there, but it's going to be one hell of an end to the season, that's for sure.
We'll be back next week with more, but, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show, if you do like us. If you don't, that's fine, but we're on all of your platforms, and leave a wee friendly review as well, or a mean one. They're always funny. We'll see you next Tuesday.